When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike,
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.
Blog Talk Radio.
From business to blogs to marketing and motherhood, we are live. Hilary Topper on air.
Hey there, everyone. It's Hilary here, and you've signed into Hilary Topper on air on Blog Talk Radio. Today we're going to be talking with Dr. Mitchell Greene, and he's a leading clinical and sports psychologist. But before we get on with the show, a little bit about me. I'm president and CEO of HJMT Public Relations. We're a full-service public relations and social media marketing firm. I also love to blog, and I have a bunch of blogs. I have the HJMT blog, which covers marketing tips and strategies, New York Lifestyle blog, which features everything about New York, Wearable On Air, and Tech News Now. It's all part of one blog. And a triathletesdiary.com, which focuses on running, swimming, and cycling for all athletes. This show, Hilary Topper on Air, focuses on everything from business, triathlons, athletic training, and more. You can always catch us on blogtalkradio.com/Hilary Topper, or you can visit this episode on any of my blogs. And now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Mitchell Greene. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hilary. Happy to be here.
So tell us, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and yourself, Dr. Greene?
Sure. I'm a clinical and sports psychologist. I have a private practice right outside of Philadelphia, and I am also a triathlete, an endurance sport racer. So whatever I preach and whatever I advise is the kind of advice that I'd like to try to follow myself. And when triathletes or athletes talk about the challenges, the mental challenges, not just the physical challenges of competing, I feel like I know firsthand oftentimes what they're talking about, because I go through the same kinds of challenges that anybody else would go through, no matter what my degree or no matter what my expertise.
So how did you actually decide to go into sports psychology? I mean, was it because you had, an issue in a race, or, how did that come about?
Oh, it's a good question. I've always been sort of fascinated by the mental side of sport. Just quickly, even when I was in graduate school, I was following a New York Yankee who was going through a mental block, in front of the whole world. His name was Chuck Knobloch. If you're a sports fan or a Yankee fan, I'm from New York originally, you know Chuck Knobloch. And Knobloch couldn't throw the ball from second base to first base, and without having to underhand it to make sure it arrived safely. And I found that fascinating, that this most valuable player in baseball now didn't know how to throw a ball from second to first. And Knobloch, within a couple of years after that experience, was out of baseball completely. So I've always been captivated by what separates one athlete from the next. Once I had an opportunity, 10 years actually after I was in private practice, there was a time in my life where I sort of was ready to make a change, and I decided to go into sports and sort of follow this passion that I always knew was there, from the Knobloch experience years before. I should add, though, by the way, that once I started participating in triathlon, I did go through some of my own experiences in the water and in racing that did make me want to study even further the whole world of endurance racing. So I had, anxiety in the water just like others might. I had never really swam before in my life when I took up triathlon. So again, a lot of what I do today is from my own personal challenge, and I've sort of turned it into my, now my professional role. So there is a personal experience there, Hilary, as well.
Yeah, you actually wrote, and I thought this was brilliant. This is the short description that you had written for the show. You said, becoming a great athlete requires more than talent and confidence. It involves knowing how to manage the doubts, second-guessing, and negative thinking that accompanies the pursuit toward greatness. The difference between a win and a loss is often in how athletes respond to mind chatter. And in this podcast, listeners will learn a new way to approach the mental game of triathlon and life. Can you address that a little bit about how to actually calm your mind and make it work for you?
Well, yeah, sure. I kind of actually stay away from phrases like calm your mind, as much as those are very popular phrases, and I completely understand why we talk about calming your mind, but I actually find that a phrase like that actually could do some damage for an athlete, let's say getting ready to jump in the ocean at the start of their triathlon, because the goal is a little bit less about calming the mind, per se, in the approach that I use, as it is learning how to understand that the negative chatter that's coming in their mind doesn't have to be a big problem for you. In other words, the goal is to not be in a Zen state before you jump in the water. For those who are super anxious, don't get me wrong, if somebody, an experienced racer, finds himself in that Zen state, I'm not going to get in their way. But for many who are struggle, I don't want them to be thinking about how to be calm, per se. I'd rather get them understanding that these doubts and this negative chatter is sort of part of the racing experience, and that when those doubts come in, they need not to fight with them. They need not to say that this is a sign of trouble necessarily when their mind says, I don't know if I can do this, or that wave looks way too big for me. I want them to see that it's the normal chatter at work, and I can go into just a brief description of the chatter. The chatter is that voice that's full of doubt and second-guessing and negative thinking that always will show up for all of us, me included, and included the professional triathletes I work with as well. That will always show up when our mind sort of senses some danger, when it senses that we're putting ourselves at risk, and the mind the mind chatter kind of goes on duty, and it starts to pump out these messages to us that says, hey, this might be a stupid idea. Maybe you're not really ready. Maybe you're risking your life here. But it goes on overdrive oftentimes. You're often really not risking your life, but psychologically it feels like you are. And so without going on too long about it, my role in helping athletes, Hilary, is to get them to see that all of that chatter that comes, as you said, not just the day of the race, but often days or weeks before the race, that there's a way to manage that so that you don't see it as a sign of weakness or cowardliness, but rather see it as part of this sort of race package, actually part of what you've signed up for, believe it or not.
So do you have any, maybe, just one or two tips that you can offer our listeners on how they could manage that? I mean, for example, before we started this interview, we were talking a little bit about the New York City Marathon, and I was telling you that I had just completed that, and weeks before, even though I ran 21 miles, I didn't think I'd be able to do 26. I just didn't think I'd be able to do it, and I, was nervous that I would have issues with my legs, my knees, my hips, whatever, So
Sure.
What kind of tips can you give to people? I mean, this happens not only with big marathons, but with Ironman and with, half Ironman and even just Olympic triathlons, it happens, to everyone.
Sure.
What can they do to try to just manage that and be able to, get on, right?
Sure. Well, first, there was something you said that I think is important just to highlight, which is you didn't know if you could do it or not, and that's exactly why you did it. In other words, if you knew you could do it or you knew you could do it without any problems, you probably wouldn't have wanted to do it. And it was something about this challenge that you had for yourself that motivated you to train, that made you get up those early mornings and run through the rain and do everything that you had to do to try to be as ready as you could be for race day. And so it's just a bit of a side point, but an important one that I spend time with athletes, which is sort of reminding them why they're doing this. What happens is as you get closer to the race, Hilary, right, you or anybody else, as you said, all of a sudden we start to question whether we're really ready or not. And, of course, I'm trying to sort of show you that it's that not being sure whether you can do it, which is actually sort of what's behind all of this. And what makes it exciting. If I told you the day of the marathon they changed the race to a 10K, you wouldn't have wanted to bother. You would have done really well compared to maybe, let's say, a marathon, because that would be nothing for you. But it wouldn't make you feel alive in the same way that pushing yourself beyond your limits does. So first thing first is I'd like to make with my athletes, make sure that they understand that this is sort of what they signed up for, and that the nervous chatter that comes is really a sign that they're leaning into life. What's happened for you is you were sort of like, you're leaning into life, and by leaning into life, I mean you're sort of taking something, you're not taking life for granted, and you're making a decision to sort of take on something that you didn't know you were capable of doing. When the chatter comes, so some of the tips that I use is I want people to see when it comes, and you should expect it to come. So we have a lot of fun talking in my office about expecting there to be chatter to come, which is a really different way to look at it versus hoping that it doesn't come and praying to God that it doesn't come. I actually get my athletes to actually, and if you really get this, which I'll just give you the very quick version, you're actually going to thank it for sharing. Because and that sounds really funny and maybe a little silly, and when my athlete smiles, I know they're beginning to get it, which is I want them to see that there's the athlete and then there's your chatter. Your chatter's agenda is different than your agenda. You're trying to lean into life. Your chatter's trying to keep you safe. And your chatter will say and do anything it can to get you to see that your reputation's at stake, your ego is at stake, your physical well-being is at stake. But again, it goes on overdrive. So when the alarm goes off the morning of a triathlon or a marathon, way too early, right, in the morning, and your first thought is usually like a chatter type thought, which is like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Or this was a dumb idea. Or if I only had one more week, I know I'd be ready because I'd get one more extra long run in. All of that, I work with my athletes to get them to identify it. And once you can kind of name it, Hilary, then you kind of have the ability to tame it. So there's just this ability to kind of like not have chatter, but be able to sort of look at it from a distance or be able to say, okay, I get it, chatter. You're worried that I'm not going to look good. You're worried that I'm not going to do well. You're worried that what if my hip hurts? All of this, and we go through all of this together in circles. So it's not a big surprise when race day comes along. And then the last piece, and then I'll let you ask another question, and then the next piece is we just get you to refocus on something else. Because oftentimes the chatter stuff that comes up, it gets us focused on stuff that we can't control. So then my athlete and I, Hilary, you and I would have talked about, okay, what about this race do we want to focus on? Sometimes it's about the why we're out there in the first place. Sometimes it's
right.
about other aspects of the race that you want to manage with your nutrition or with your pace. And we begin to let the chatter come and let the chatter go. We kind of let it be. We don't make it more than it is. It's uncomfortable, no doubt about it, but we don't tend to over-focus on it, and that helps make a big difference for athletes as they approach their next race.
Why do you think you? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you had mentioned during, just before that we pushing beyond the limits. Why do you think? I mean, we're we all work, we all have day jobs, we're not professionals. Why do you think there's a group of us who just push ourselves beyond the limit?
Well, I
Maybe
think
that's a
really
loaded
good.
question.
No, I think it's a really great question. I think that there is no other time when we really often, many of us, feel as alive as we really can feel when we're, except when we're pushing ourselves past our limits. I think that the purpose of all this racing is, where we want to discover what we're capable of, and that's really exciting. It can be nerve-wracking, as you just kind of alluded to, but if we knew exactly what we were capable of, our lives would be really boring. If we knew what our potential, if we always met our potential, Hilary, there would be no other games to play. So games, I'm calling triathlon a game, marathon running is a game, just like playing Monopoly is a game. Gets us a chance to sort of challenge ourselves in a way and experience something about ourselves that most of us can't get in our day jobs or watching Netflix, or getting the kids ready for bed. It becomes deeply personal in that way. And so, but it's very easy to lose sight of that as the training goes on and or people start focusing too much on goals and results. As you said, I often see that. Well, none of us, although I do work with athletes who, will be on the cover of magazines and will be, interviewed after the race. Most of us are not. And most of us do have to remember that this is a very personal challenge. And therefore that voice in our head that worries so much about what everyone else might needs to be quelled and calmed.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about strategies that you may provide for coaches and parents who have a son or daughter who are athletic. Sometimes it gets to the point where either the parent pushes too hard or the coaches push too hard. How do you manage that, and how do you get your child to get to the next level?
Right. Well, the first thing is you have to figure out whether it's your child that wants to get to the next level or whether it's you as a parent or coach that solely wants him or her to get to the next level. That may sound, just simple to figure out, but that can get complicated because oftentimes kids aren't sure. If I'm thinking about kids, let's say in their teenage years or late teenage years, many of them aren't sure whether they want to go and play at, let's say if we call the next level college, just as one way to define the next level, and that's a lot of who I see in my practice. Many aren't sure. Some think they're sure and then change their mind. The best advice for parents is to try to make sure that they can separate and make a distinction between their goals and their son or daughter's goals when it comes to sport. I think the other thing that I see and I work on with my clients is often parents and the kids don't take enough time to figure out why they want to get to the next level. Or they need to be clear about why is it? Is it really for fame and glory, or is it really because they want to challenge themselves to work harder and to be better? And so there are conversations like that. Additionally, Hilary, I think I spend a lot of time also talking to parents about whose sport this is, that at certain points the parents have to be willing to kind of turn the reins over to their son or daughter. And that can be very difficult because it's not the parents' sport. It's really the kids to play. And oftentimes the kids to figure out. Advising parents to drop their son or daughter off at a game or a practice and not go in and watch the practice or not go in and watch the game. I have to advise that for some parents, not that there's anything wrong with watching, but some parents get over-involved and over-focused on their child's goals and get way too then involved in the game And then sometimes the dreaded car ride home becomes a nightmare. I sometimes call it hell on wheels because the parent has seen way too much of their son or daughter's practice or game. They have way too much to say way too soon about what they think that the child should have done, and all of a sudden there's a lot of resentment. So my advice for parents and coaches too is to first figure out whether your goals are aligned with your athlete, your son or daughter's goals. And sometimes just a simple goal writing exercise is what it takes just to get clear about where there's connection and overlap and where there's divergence. Making sure the athlete or the coach or the parent understands why those goals are important to them. What is it about playing in college that's important to you? What is it about becoming number one in the country that's important to you? Why is that important to you? Is a conversation that we are often trying to have. And then the last piece was just alluding to this idea of giving the child space and making sure that it's their sport and not necessarily feeling this obligation to go to every game or every practice, because it can kind of confuse, again, who this is really for.
Interesting. This was great, Dr. Greene. Let me ask you one last question. How can somebody get in touch with you, or how, do you offer any kind of seminars or anything that people can go to learn more about this?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, I'm excited to say, here at the end of November that in about a week's time, my brand new website will be up and running, and that's www.greenepsych.com, GreenEPSYCH.com. As part of my new website, I'm going to be launching some new products and some new packages for people who aren't necessarily in the Philadelphia or Pennsylvania area, where I'm going to be offering online seminars and online sports psych coaching, which we can do through Skype oftentimes and a little bit of phone. And for those athletes or parents who are interested, we can also I have homework that I give the players, very simple homework to just reinforce what we're trying to work on. And all my other contact information, anything else that you want to find out about what we have to offer you, and my email address, all of that can be found through my website. Again, Greene Psych, with an E at the end of Greene.com.
Awesome. Well, this was a fantastic show, and I really appreciate you being on the show. I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you want more information on this show or any other show, visit us at NY Lifestyle Blog, atriathletesdiary.com, or go to blogtalkradio.com/Hilary Topper. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Hilary Topper On Air. For more show information, visit blogtalkradio.com/Hilary Topper.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can seem intense. Like breakup R&B intense.
I thought you said you loved the sweater that I got you. If you didn't, you could have told me.
Geico makes it easy. Just go to Geico.com anytime to update or check your policy without all the extra drama.
I even had a gift receipt.
The holidays are right around the corner, and Acme is ready. With Lancaster brand meats, delicious desserts, custom party trays, and a large selection of gift cards, Acme is your one-stop holiday shop, so you can spend more time enjoying the holidays. For a delicious dinner this week, stop by and pick up thin-sliced, boneless, skinless chicken breast or thighs, buy one, get two free, and get 40% off Stouffer's single-serve entrees. Tastier meals, bigger deals, better holidays. Acme, your favorite local supermarket.